We have a very special guest alert because on today's show, we are bringing on Jeff Miller from the LA Times to talk about all this Jim Harbaugh hullabaloo, Justin Herbert, and the Chargers' future.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Drogmeyer, and we've been covering the Chargers together now for 8 seasons together, but this is our 6th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen, and to make sure you never want to miss big interviews like today's show, go subscribe and follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel, and listen wherever you get your podcast from. Today, we're going to be getting in Jeff Miller, who's from the LA Times and does a great job covering this team, and I'm sure he has a chaotic time going around him right now. But we do get into Jim Harbaugh, of course, the Chargers GM search, how important this next hire is for Justin Herbert, and so much more. But today's crossover Thursday, thanks for rubbing it in, Locked On episode, is brought to you by PrizePicks, the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL. Use the code all lowercase LockedOnNFL for a first deposit match up to $100. Here he is, Jeff Miller. All right, guys, well, here is our very special guest today. We have Jeff Miller from the LA Times. You can find him on Twitter or X at Jeff Miller LAT, and he also just wrote a great piece about the Jim Harbaugh interview, and also, most importantly, the requirements that still need to happen before they are able to hire him. But Jeff, thank you so much for coming on the show, man. We are gearing up for a crazy offseason.
I appreciate you guys having me. It's taken a while. You know, it took Jim Harbaugh getting in the news for you guys to finally reach out to me. I'm trying not to take that personal, but no, I appreciate it. Let's talk some coaching, Harbaugh, all that stuff.
Yeah, man, it's been a circus. And I mean, also a shout out to Jeff because he was one of the nicest people to me when I was out there at training camp last year covering the team. So thank you for that. But it has to start where it has to start, right? And right now, the biggest thing in Chargers world is just about every single fan wants Jim Harbaugh to be the next Chargers head coach. They interviewed him this week. Things reportedly went well. Do you think that this team finally kind of has that chance to land the superstar level coach that has evaded them probably since Marty Schottenheimer?
It sure feels like they have a chance. Yeah. I mean, we just found out that the Falcons talked to Harbaugh too. We were waiting to see if anybody else, for a while there, it looked like Michigan or the Chargers, right?
That gave every Chargers fan a heart attack when they saw that, by the way.
Exactly. I'm sure it did. But I mean, it seems like it's there for him. If it works out, if that's what they want, if that's what he wants, which is important here. You know, the thing that's interesting about this is both these teams have, or both these sides rather, have leverage, right? I mean, Harbaugh has, by all accounts, this massive extension sitting there for Michigan, which apparently has been there for a while. And, you know, he can pick and choose what he wants at this point. Well, the Chargers, you know, they have Justin Herbert, which gives them some leverage because of all these jobs, we all know that it's like the no-brainer of all no-brainers. All these jobs that are available right now, sitting here as we're talking right at this point, the Chargers job is easily the best one because of Justin Herbert. So, you know, if this is what both sides want, and if they're able to work out, I mean, there's a lot to work out. And with Harbaugh, I think there's even more to work out just because there's so much with him. When you hire him, you get all of him, which is good and bad. But it's very complicated. It's not like a simple, you know, I think the Brandon Staley hire was probably a lot simpler than this one. If they go with Harbaugh, is going to end up being. But, yeah, I mean, the chance, it seems like it's right there for both sides if they want to make this happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Have you ever seen a fan base around one? Yeah, I mean, have you ever seen a fan base around one specific candidate and be so like head over heels the way that the Charger fans have rallied for Harbaugh?
Head over heels is it. You know what's interesting, you guys? Like, I don't know if you noticed this, but to me, when Michigan won the Rose Bowl, like a flip got switched, and all of a sudden, he was the guy that was the obvious candidate. You know, for everybody, but especially for the Chargers. And all of a sudden, they won that game, and 5 minutes after the game, everybody thought, you know, it connected the two dots that Harbaugh is going to the Chargers. And I don't know, I'm not sure why that was, but, you know, there was that whole issue about can he win a playoff game at Michigan the past 2 years. He finally broke through, and it was like that was like the one moment where people were like, okay, that's it. Now he's going to leave. He's done this. And then, a week later they win the national championship, and it even ramped up even more because it's very easy to connect the dots between these two. Okay. We all know that, right? I mean, if you're going to leave a job, you leave on top. Michigan's got a bunch of guys who are leaving, a bunch of players who are going to leave. I'm sure they're still
like 40 seniors, right?
Yeah. Totally, yeah. So they're still going to be good, but he's losing a bunch of his guys. It's absolutely the time he could leave. The Chargers, we all know why they would be attracted to a guy like him. So, but it was real interesting to me when you mentioned head over heels. It was like, on that game, and then like the next week, everything the whole dynamic of it changed, and it became like, if the Chargers don't get Jim Harbaugh, it's a complete failure.
Oh yeah,
That's kind of what it felt like.
And that's what it does feel like, right? Like it feels like if it's not Harbaugh, which is crazy to say because I'm going to preface this by saying, hey, guys like Mike Vrabel and Bill Belichick, maybe even Pete Carroll are out there. Like this is one of the wildest coaching cycles that I've seen. Yet it still feels like if it's not Jim Harbaugh, people are going to be showing up, to the brand new facilities with pitchforks and torches and things like that, because it feels like it's Jim Harbaugh or bust for a lot of these fans right now. I've never seen anything like it, especially with what the options are available. But I think one of the reasons there's so much angst around the Harbaugh specifically and the levels that it's reached is because Chargers fans don't want to see Justin Herbert's career wasted like they think Phillip Rivers' career was, right? Having those two back-to-back quarterbacks, obviously the Packers have their thing now with Jordan Love following Aaron Rodgers, following Brett Favre. But those guys have had success, right? When Chargers think about Phillip Rivers, what could have been. The best quarterback did not win one, right? Him and Dan Marino kind of a situation. So how crucial do you think it is for them to get this hiring right because of what it'll do for Justin Herbert having some continuity and having a chance to grow in a stable situation?
Yeah, I think you nailed it exactly. I mean, that's the fear everyone has. And then you couple that with the last few hires, that haven't gone well. And people, if you bring in another first-time head coach, one of these coordinator types who now is going to be a head coach, everyone is immediately going to assume it's going to be a disaster because of what just happened. And it's ratcheted up a few more levels just because of Justin Herbert. Exactly what you said. People already, they're already talking about him in a Marino kind of setting. Or they're talking about him, a Mike Trout kind of situation in baseball where It's like they're ruining this guy. Like this is a disaster. We've got this great quarterback, and he's going to waste. He's kind of dying right in front of our eyes here because they can't get this guy into the playoffs and have any success. So I think there's all that's real, and I think it's real among the players. I mean, Herbert's never going to come out and say this, but he's got to feel that. He's smart enough to understand what's going on. Now I don't think it really affects him at all, but he knows it's there. I'm sure people have asking him about it, friends, family, whatever. He knows that narrative is out there. Like I said, it's not going to affect him, but it's something I'm sure he would love to take care of and shut up and never have to hear again.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, he's not a guy that's big on social media, and he always likes to kind of let his play do the talking. But yeah, to kind of get that narrative behind him, I'm sure would be very nice. Almost equally as important to the head coaching hire is the decision on who the Chargers go with for their next general manager. And they have cast a pretty wide net as far as that's concerned. Do you think there are any leaders in that clubhouse at this point on who the next GM could be?
Ian Cunningham is a guy that seems to keep coming up a lot. And, Daniel Popper, who one of my colleagues on the team, is a real good reporter, real good writer. He's kind of advocated for Cunningham, and Popper knows this stuff better than I do. I'm not going to lie to you. He's good on X's and O's. He's good on personnel stuff. And, he's good on this kind of stuff. So he's really endorsed, or he's not, I shouldn't say endorsed, but he's kind of put out there the idea that that's probably the best choice. So that, he's a guy that, some other people have said the same thing. I don't know that there is necessarily a leader among that group right now. And I think a lot of it depends on Harbaugh. And if he ends up becoming the head coach, then you've got to get somebody who can work with him. And I think part of Cunningham's background is the idea that he could work with Harbaugh. Whoever it is, it's going to be somebody who is going to be having to work in concert with whoever the coach is. So it kind of feels like, to me at least right now, they're kind of going down this coaching road and probably going to satisfy this Harbaugh thing first. Figure out where that goes before. That's what it seems like to me. Now, who knows? But that's kind of the feel I've got. So we'll see. But like, to answer your question, I don't really know. I don't have a good feel or sense or nobody has indicated to me at all right now in terms of those GMs. They've interviewed 7 of them now, like who might be the leader or how they might stack up.
All right, guys, we'll stay right there because we have much more with Jeff Miller about this GM search, the coaching search, and the Chargers offseason coming up right after this. I do need to tell you guys, though, that today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you, and it's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased on your life. It's one of my favorite parts about therapy. So today, I want to tell you about how I really feel about something. You might even be thinking the same thing this week. And for me, I like to blame my dad for making me a Chargers fan from birth. That is something I didn't get a choice on. He's now jumped back to the Rams and has much less heartbreak and a Super Bowl championship recently. But I'm stuck with the Chargers, and what I really blame the Chargers for is just making me unreasonably upset, ruining many Sundays for me, and also just making it hard for me to have hope. But one of the things that has helped me with that is therapy, and therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it's important to get things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. So right now you can visit betterhelp.com/lockedon and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. I also need to tell you guys about Logix because you know we get into a lot of in-depth analysis and takes around here, but I need to give you my hottest take of the day. The best lineup in LA right now is the lineup of auto loans at Logix. That's right, better than the Dodgers lineup. Sorry, Dodgers fans. They start off at the top with my favorites, the proven and dependable new and used vehicle loans. You can count on these guys to give you low rates and save you big-time bucks. Next up, you got the exciting new rookie sensation in their electric vehicle loans with super low rates and flexible payment terms. Rounding out their lineup, they've got the auto refinancing loans and lease buyout loans. With these guys, you could lower your monthly payments, that's great, and get on the road to owning your car faster. Look, I know it's a hot take, but seriously, no one can beat the lineup at Logix. Visit your local Logix branch right here in LA and the surrounding area and let one of their amazing team members help you, or just apply online in minutes at logixbanking.com/car. That's LOGIX banking.com/car. Well, and that's the crazy thing about it is like they have gone with so many guys, and the crazier thing is basically every single one of them has a tie to Jim Harbaugh one way or the other, right? And like you talked about it before, like when you get Jim Harbaugh, you get the good and the bad, right? The quirks and kind of the weirdness that comes with Jim Harbaugh, but you also get, the guy who's been able to shift different franchises at every single stop he's been. So it's like, yeah, there's going to be some uncomfortableness to it, but like maybe you need that uncomfortable, right? Like maybe you need someone to come in and kind of shock the culture. So going based on what you said, kind of inversely speaking, because the thing is these general managers, as we saw with Washington and Adam Peters, they might not wait around for you to decide on your head coach, right? Like you might need to get one of these guys if they really stand out to you, and someone like Ian Cunningham makes a lot of sense just coming from a lot of winning organizations. But if the Chargers flip it and they end up going with a general manager before they sign Harbaugh, do you think that could kind of tip us off a little bit to how in on Jim Harbaugh they are? Like if they end up going with someone like an Ian Cunningham, if they go with someone like Ed Dodds, who worked with Jim Harbaugh back in the day with the Raiders, do you think that would give you a sign of, okay, hey, yeah, they're probably doing this at least somewhat based on the merit, but also, hey, this guy also has a big tie to Jim Harbaugh, and that's no coincidence.
Yeah, I think you said it, that you could almost connect all these people in NFL, all these guys who've been around for a while, you can almost connect them one way or the other through either working together or they worked with the same guy, maybe at different points and all that.
Or John Harbaugh, either him or his brother. Yeah,
exactly. So there could be some of that. I mean, that would be interesting to see if it came to that, and then it would be probably one of those things we'd find out later on if it actually had a factor in there at all.
Right.
But the thing that's funny about all this is somebody asked me the other day, another sports writer, I'm not going to identify who it was, but asked me. So the Chargers have interviewed both of the coordinators for the Ravens, right?
Right.
And they asked me, do you think they interviewed the Ravens coordinators because they're going to hire Harbaugh and then he can hire one or two of those guys because they work for his brother? And I was like, how does that like? Do you think that John is going to? I assume John likes his two coordinators.
Yeah.
He just give them to his brother because
definitely not. Yeah.
No.
But that's the kind of stuff where people are trying to connect all this. And I get it because you see it all the time in the NFL. You see it all over sports, but especially it seems like in the NFL, there's all these little connections, these little tunnels, and these backgrounds, and that all cross and overlap.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think I'm guessing whoever it ends up being, we're going to find out they had a background with Harbaugh. If it ends up being Jim Harbaugh one way or the other, there's something there. I think it's almost inevitable, it seems like.
Yeah, switching gears here a little bit, things escalated quickly with Brandon Staley late in the season with a string of, some really bad losses, but it felt like it started when he snapped on you after the loss to the Titans, where he said, "We just lost a game in overtime, Jeff. How do you think the mood is?" Did it seem like at that point that he may have kind of been in over his head?
I'll be honest with you guys. I think, to me, I go back to that Denver game last year and that disaster and playing the guy.
Week 18,
playing Mike
Williams.
Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you that after that game, in that post game press conference, when he walked in that room, something happened that night. Like that Mike Williams got hurt. He was asked about that. He was asked if Mike Williams could have come back in the game, and he said, maybe, yeah, we don't know.
Yeah, that was weird.
He had just watched Mike Williams. He couldn't even walk to the bus.
Yeah.
And he was and that night, I thought to myself, and I think we all did, we were sitting up in the press box afterward, and then the reports come out, Mike Williams is going to be okay. He's all right. He's going to play next week, in which, again, a few of us were like, I don't know about that. That's pretty early to be ruling a guy in for the next week.
Definitely.
And of course, we know what happened. But that night, it really, to me, it seemed like this thing started to turn on Staley. And the aftermath of that, then Mike not being able to play against the Jaguars, and then what happened against the Jaguars, it just, that to me is kind of where it really started to spiral down. And then this year, once he got all upset about, the suggestion that the Jaguar loss was bleeding into this season, he got all upset about that. And then he got upset about, my question. And then it sort of, it just kept escalating. Every time they lose, he'd get in these situations where he was asked these uncomfortable questions, and he didn't handle it well. And he doubled down basically on, this is, I'm going to do it this way. This is the way I do it. I know it's going to succeed. I know I can make this work. This is my way. It's,
my scheme is good. It's not that, it's the players. Yeah.
Yeah. And he just kept going back to that, and he just dug in deeper and deeper, and he ended up burying himself deeper and deeper. But yeah, by the end of it, he looked clearly like a guy who just, in that moment just was not ready to be a head coach. And, it's funny, you go back to his first season and you think about that team. They won at KC, at Cincinnati, at Philly. Think about that. Those are three,
impressively. Yeah.
Yeah.
And those were the last three big games he won.
And it turns out those are the three biggest games he won. Those are the three big games,
besides that Miami game, right? The anomaly game.
Yeah, the Miami game at home when they throttled those guys and just shut them down. But so, if you think about how quickly he went down, like it's really, it's staggering, really. And to me, like I said, I thought the Week 18 last season was where it really started. But this year it just spiraled quickly, and he just kept burying himself worse and worse in those post games.
And then Jeff Miller just thought to himself, hey, are you really mad at me, or are you mad at Daniel Popper for asking about the Jaguars game, all right? Don't take it out on me over here. No, I mean, credit to you guys, for holding him accountable and stuff, and that makes a lot of sense. And even when I was at training camp last year, I won't say any names, but, like, the belief was, hey, this guy is still thought of in the NFL as one of the best game planners going into a game that's out there. Like, he can still scheme schematically, he can put the right defense in place, but the players weren't able to execute it. But the thing is when you keep saying that, like, the game plans are good, but it's my fault. But it's like everyone knows you're blaming the players. Like, you're not saying it directly, but that's what you're saying at the end of the day. And so I think it does kind of lend itself to, that's why having that head coaching experience matters, right? Because it's not just all about the X's and O's. That's not always the most important thing. And then you see someone like Jim Harbaugh, who's at the Rose Bowl, right, just getting drilled with peppered with questions about the NFL, and he's like, one track mind, and it just totally doesn't even faze him. And I think that kind of gives some insight into kind of both sides of being a head coach and why it's not just all the scheme and the X's and O's and being a boy genius and all of those, wonderkin kind of things. But we have more of this Jeff Miller interview, including what the Chargers are going to do in this crucial offseason as far as their cap and who they're going to keep, and also what to expect from Quentin Johnston coming up right after this. I do first need to tell you guys, though, at the start of the new year, every small business owner is asking themselves the same question: what's the one move I can make that'll take my business to the next level in 2024? LinkedIn Jobs knows that your success all depends on the team you surround yourself with. That's why LinkedIn Jobs has created the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn just isn't another job post. LinkedIn has a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals, which makes it the best place to hire. I really, really hope that the Chargers are using LinkedIn Jobs for their GM and head coaching search, because you're not going to find more qualified candidates. And hiring is super easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn number one in delivering quality hires versus their leading competitors. Thankfully, with LinkedIn, you get a process that's intuitive, quick, and easy. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnNFL to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. I also need to tell you guys about the Game Time app, because just because the Chargers season is over doesn't mean you're going to stop going to all the fun and events that you have going on near you. And if you need tickets to anything, whether it's sports, music, comedy, theater, whatever it is, you have to go with Game Time, because with killer deals on last-minute tickets and their best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun that you're going to have. I hate having to go look through a bunch of different ticketing process, sites and things like that, and trying to find the best ticket, because with Game Time, the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the tickets difference. I mean, that means you're making money off Game Time if you find a cheaper ticket. So it's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. But again, create an account, use that code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Last minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. But let's talk about this team now going forward, because now with Tom Telesco gone, the next GM is going to come into a really tough situation with the cap, and two of the biggest cap hits going into next year are Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. So with Keenan Allen doing what he did this season, right, probably having one of his best seasons, do you think it makes it kind of a foregone conclusion that if one of those guys is going to get released, it's Mike Williams just because of the injury? Or do you think like they're going into this offseason and who they end up hiring at GM, like everything's kind of still on the table, even with how successful he was?
Yeah, I think, you've got, really the four guys that
The four big ones.
Yeah, it's Mike Williams, Keenan, Joey Bosa, and Khalil Mack. Those are really the four. They're all $30 million plus cap hits. Half the cap or more than half the cap is those four guys. So something has to happen there. Now, they can't restructure. They could, in theory, they could restructure Joey because he's got 2 years left, right? The other three guys have 1 year, so they can't restructure those guys. They could extend them.
Great point.
And the one thing with Tom was not. He never did these void years. Some of the stuff, this kind of
cap manipulation, that
you can do. So if they get somebody in here who can do some of that stuff or is willing to do some of that stuff, I don't know. We could that. So there's a little bit of that unknown. The two easy ones to me, I mean, Khalil Mack he showed no signs of acting his age this year. That was
at all.
The only issue, the biggest concern I have about Khalil is he's been able to stay on the field, and the odds of a guy continuing to do that year after year, we know are not great.
Right. Father Time's undefeated. Yeah.
Yeah. But this guy takes care of himself, but still, there's fluky stuff happens. You get rolled up on whatever.
Sure.
And then Keenan was spectacular. I mean, I was really disappointed just for him that he got hurt, because he was going to end up with some incredible numbers.
Yeah.
He'd been in the league a decade more, and it was going to be spectacular. So I really feel bad for him. But those are the two guys who I think cause you pause to think, hey, what do we want to do with these guys that clearly have value? The other two guys have value, but they just haven't been able to stay on the field. And
they're the two younger guys, which makes it tougher, right? That's what makes it hard.
Exactly. So I wish there was an easy answer, because I would give it to the Chargers and I'd make a lot of money as a consultant, but there isn't an easy answer. I don't. I guess if I had to keep one of them, I would try to keep Khalil, I guess, and just hope to God that he doesn't, fate doesn't catch up to him, because that guy, he takes care of himself. He's a pro. He's great in the locker room. The players love him. His teammates love him. Whoever the coach is, they're going to love him. That's not to say the other guys are bad guys. They're not,
right.
But it's just, I wish I could tell you what they're going to do or what they should do, but I don't really know. Who knows? They may clean. I don't say clean the house, but I mean, they could end up parting ways with all four of them and really starting over or really turning it back. But the good news is, whatever they do, we've learned in the NFL now, these aren't 5-year rebuilds or 3-year rebuilds. You can turn this stuff around pretty quick. So if you're a Charger fan, you can kind of brace for some bad stuff, but it doesn't mean it's going to be, 2-3 years of just bad play because of what has to happen with the roster in the next few months.
Absolutely. And I mean, we've seen with other organizations that you can do some cap gymnastics. I mean, just look at the New Orleans Saints. It seems like they do that every single year.
Seems like the bill always comes at some point, though. Yeah. The Chargers have that big bill coming to the table this year. And then also the J.C. Jackson of it all, too. I mean, that's just – it's a mess. I mean, but I think to your point, though, when you're saying, like, hey, teams can't really, you don't have that timeline, right? Especially with new guys coming into the job. You don't have the timeline to have a full-blown rebuild and take 3 or 4 years, especially with Justin Herbert. And I think when you have Justin Herbert, you should always be competitive, right? Like, you have a much faster track to getting things around, like we kind of saw with the Vikings, right? Like, everyone expected the Vikings to be totally terrible this year, and with Kirk Cousins, they were actually pretty good and probably would have made the playoffs pretty easily if he hadn't have gotten hurt. So, do you think a competitive 2024 roster is still something that's possible for this team? Or do you think it's more likely that you see a full-blown blow-up?
I think it's very possible that, this team could be competitive no matter what happens. And I know this, we're talking about the Chargers, but look at the Rams. The Rams are supposed to be horrible. I thought the Rams were going to be a 3 or 4 win team. And they just made the playoffs.
Yeah, it was a big surprise. Yeah.
And they had a bunch of young guys. And so, they have a quarterback. Look at what happened with the Texans. Now, the Texans situation.
Crazy.
That turned, I know first-year coach, great. I know they did some great stuff. That was a quarterback. Let's be honest. It was C.J. Stroud turned that whole thing around. Well, the Chargers have a quarterback. So they've already got that one's taken care of. So I think this thing's going to be, there's going to be turnover. There's going to be a bunch of new guys, but that doesn't mean, this team could, their roster could take a step back, so to speak. And they could easily win more than 5 games, what they did this year. I don't think there's any question. There's no reason to think, even if this is rebuilt, from, other than just a core, a real small handful of guys, there's no reason to think, this is going to be a disaster and they're going to be a 2 or 3 win team. I don't think that's going to happen. I mean, you said it, Justin Herbert, it makes them just a lot better. If they can just protect him and keep him healthy, which we haven't seen now. We've seen him get banged up and he's dealing with stuff all the time now. If they can protect him better, there's no reason this doesn't have to be a 5-win season followed by a 4-win season. And then let's get this thing going. I mean, they could bounce back next year and be a lot better in a lot better position, at the end of the season than they were this year.
Well, Jeff, we'll get you out of here on this one. One of the most discussed players on the Chargers this year was first-round pick Quentin Johnston, who's probably given more than he could probably handle in his rookie season and has some pretty bad moments. Do you think that he can, improve, or that he did improve enough down the stretch to kind of give some fans some hope that he can be a usable player moving forward?
I would say the one thing about that, I thought one thing that the Chargers did a horrible job was how they used him. And they did not use him the way that they told us they were going to use him.
So
that
weird.
We thought they were going to use him. And I'm going to go back. This goes back to, Staley. I know Charger fans are done with Staley, but
sure.
I think, and to answer your Quentin Johnston question, if you go back to Staley, and the one thing I think he failed in, him and his staff, they did not put the players in the best position to succeed.
Amen.
And we saw that repeatedly, constantly on defense. Okay, we saw it all the time on defense with his scheme, with the late changes or calling in signals as a play clock's running down, the offense is in mode. All this stuff is ridiculous. Well, with Quentin, I think they did the same thing. They did not set him up to succeed. They didn't he wasn't doing the stuff that he wasn't running the routes that we thought he was going to run. They weren't getting him the ball, that whole after the catch, all that stuff that he could do that they told us he did so well. And that's why they got him. They didn't use him in that way. So the one thing I would say is I'm concerned about his hands. Yes. But I would say we get a new coach in here. They get a new, system. They get a new, whatever it is, a whole new approach to it. They might, use him in a completely different way. And we might see if he can hang on to the ball, we might see a much better Quentin Johnston just because of how he's being used and where he's getting the ball.
Well, and I think, Jeff, just seeing him out there, it's NFL level athleticism. He moves a different way with the ball in his hands. I noticed it when I was at training.
Seems like nobody can tackle him either.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of plays this year where 3 guys were on him and they just blow the whistle. He never actually went down, right? But you're right. And I think I've talked to an NFL player about this who basically said one of the biggest misconceptions about coaching in the NFL is every single coach comes in and says, hey, I'm going to do what it takes to get the most out of these players. But what a lot of them do is they go back to what worked for them in the past, right? Especially when they're backed up against the wall, whether or not that actually fits the strength of the players on the roster. So it is nice to kind of have that validated because, he wasn't a deep ball player in college, right? No. He was a catch short passes and make something happen with the ball in his hands. And it just felt like that was continually underused. Maybe got a tiny bit better with some of the success he had later on in the season, but probably too soon to say. And I mean, like me and David always talk about, you also have Mike Williams, who had 10 catches as a rookie. So he's a great example of how much better someone can be even after being labeled as a bust in their rookie season. But thank you so much for coming on, man. You were super insightful. Hopefully we can have you on. And I also just want to wish you the best of luck with the craziness if the Chargers get Jim Harbaugh or if they don't, because it's probably going to be chaos for you either way.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah, I'll come on anytime, you guys. Have fun. Yeah, it was good time.
All right, well, a very special thank you to Jeff Miller for coming on the show. Can't wait to get him back on and can't wait to continue bringing you the best interviews and the biggest stories throughout the rest of the offseason because it is your team every day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. To make sure you guys don't miss shows like this, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. You can also find us on our social media on Twitter at Locked On LAC, on Instagram at Locked On Chargers, and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. We post the show to all of those places every single day, including me and David's own personal Twitter accounts at Dan Talk Sports for me and Dro Talk SD for David. But make sure you guys are back here tomorrow. Last show of the week. We might get some news on the Jim Harbaugh front, and that's all we are, the Locked On Jim Harbaugh's podcast. So make sure you're back here with us tomorrow. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.